live. Welcome to the MLB Strategy Show, Tuesday, October 13th. Another two-gamer because that's the amount of games that are left in baseball. We don't have any other choices other than individual one-gamers. Braves picked up a win yesterday, so I guess they were happy to have me do baseball content. Well, I'm back again, and they can get two wins. I'm Josh Engleman. I'm joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by Yahoo Sports. We'll touch on Yahoo in a little bit, but Adam, first and foremost, how are you?
Good. Looking forward to another two-game baseball slate. It's nice though. Like I like the teams other than Houston, so it's at least enjoyable to watch.
You don't like Houston?
No,
I mean, I know that this is not like related to cheating.
it is.
It is related to cheating.
I mean, I don't care about the cheating, but I also would like to watch Houston lose. Like,
did you liked them before that though, right? I don't want to
to
say
an
like
extent, yeah.
I mean like I don't mean like we don't like anything anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I like them. Like they're good, they're young, they're fun, like whatever.
Okay.
And then they won, and then the cheating thing happened, and now I enjoy watching them lose.
Interesting. Okay, so like I'm on the opposite side in that one, I obviously don't care that they cheat.
Right. Like I don't care that they cheated in that. I think there's a lot of teams cheating, and
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I know you're
caught.
not taking like a moral stand here.
Yeah, and they got caught, whatever. But still they got caught. We know that they cheated. I'm cool with watching them lose, and it gives me something to root against.
See, like I look at it because they're so hated now, I obviously like them more. And
Right.
since they're an analytical team as aggressively as any other team in baseball, that also plays directly to me. So they're checking off both boxes. And now, just because everyone, it's like if the Braves weren't in, I'm cheering for the Astros, and I hope that they tell everyone to eat one, like,
Yeah,
and win the
that's
World
a fair
Series.
take.
Yeah, which is where I assumed your take would be, in that now that everyone hates them, we will get a lot of mileage out of loving them.
No,
Eh.
don't really like them.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I definitely. I'm not as like far out there as like I can't. How could they do this? Like blah blah blah. Like they're all cheating.
Yeah.
They just did it better and then got caught. But yeah, it's still. I have no issue rooting against them now.
I assume you had no issue rooting against the Patriots either.
Always root against the Patriots.
Sure. See, like by the time that they got fully established, once the cheating started, I'm in then. I'm team Patriots.
Yeah.
I'm a horrible person. At least that doesn't trickle over to my politics, though. That will go a different direction. We got two games. You guys know it. You guys know who's playing. There's not a lot of super interesting stuff for us to touch on. That is not updated ownership, is it? No, it is not. Like, okay, here we go. 0 ownership on somebody again, but that's because I just pasted in yesterday's. I think it's just time to dive in. We've got two games. We're going to touch on literally everything for the 23 people that are in here right now. So hit that thumbs up. 25% of you have already done it. Can everybody listening, can the 24 people that are here all hit the thumbs up? We've never had 100% likes for everybody that was here. I think that should be attainable for us today. Let's just dive in. Tampa Bay Rays, Houston Astros. Interesting to me that they're flipping the start times. I mean, like, I guess I understand it, but I don't. It's, like, weird. Wouldn't have expected it.
It's kind of weird because you would think that. So one of the issues they were having, especially like at the beginning of the postseason when you had so many games going, was that you had guys playing at really weird times as far as their body clock goes. I guess that's not quite as much of an issue anymore since we're at more normal times. But I kind of just assumed they would leave the start times the same so that you just get into a rhythm and perform better.
Weird. Rays and Stros. 4.2 run implied total for the Rays, 3.2 for the Stros, 61% chance to win for Tampa. It's going to be Ryan Yarbrough against Jose Urquidy. We don't have ownership yet. Yarbrough 7,400 on DraftKings, 7K on FanDuel. Urquidy 7,100 on DraftKings, 7,700 on FanDuel. Easiest way to start this is simply, who do you prefer, Yarbrough or Urquidy?
I guess Yarbrough.
Ooh, okay. I have Urquidy significantly higher. I think that I also have him significantly overprojected. So there's that. But I don't think that he would fall behind Yarbrough, even if I had a very, very pessimistic downturn to his projection. So talk to me a little bit about Yarbrough. Obviously, Yarbrough has the more difficult matchup going up against Houston.
Yeah, I think it's a more difficult matchup. I don't have a lot of confidence in either of these guys. I don't think either one goes particularly deep into the game. You're getting Yarbrough starting, which is nice, but just the way Tampa Bay works, I expect them to get Yarbrough out pretty much as soon as they reasonably can and get into that bullpen. So, I expect 4 or 5 innings from Yarbrough most likely.
Yeah.
It's obviously a tough matchup, but I think he is a pretty good pitcher. A little bit higher strikeout percentage than Urquidy this year. 18.8% for Yarbrough, only 14.7 for Urquidy, which is really weird because last year he had decent strikeout numbers.
Yeah. And that's why I have what I believe is too high of a projection for Urquidy, because the 24% strikeout rate coming out of Steamer might be a tad high.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, you don't see it happen very often because strikeout numbers stabilize quickly. So it's like, normally when you see strikeout numbers change drastically, you can either look and see that they have some new pitch and got better, or they're like injured or something, or coming off injury. Neither is the case. It's just like he stopped striking people out. So it's really weird because on one hand, I want to just say, yeah, it's a small sample size, and on the other hand, it's strikeouts, and it shouldn't still be doing this. So I don't really know, but I am treating this year's numbers like they matter. So a little bit of an edge to Yarbrough there. Plus, we just have a relatively long track record of Yarbrough just being an effective, major league pitcher.
Yeah.
Last year against right-handed hitters, held them to a 265 WOBA. This year, 294 WOBA. So, you combine them, you get 279, 141 expected ISO, 20% strikeout percentage. Again, not in love with either of these guys, but just feel a little bit more confident in Yarbrough.
I just took a 15% decrease to Yarborough's strikeout rate just to see what that would do. 15% seems like a lot. I know it's probably more than that if you just used raw data from 19, raw data from 20. That does pull them closer, but it still has Urquidy by basically a point. The good news is salary doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter that he's 7,100. It doesn't matter that Yarborough's 7,400. It doesn't even really matter that Clayton Kershaw is 8,800. None of these guys are showing up at like 10K and making you make legitimate decisions like, should I go to a reliever? Do you have any, it's probably a good time to just have that conversation. Do you have any thoughts about throwing relievers on these 2-game slates?
I'm not that interested in it because in part because of the hitter pricing, it's just not that expensive.
Yeah.
You have, looking at DraftKings, you have 3 players on the slate that are at least $5,000 in Freeman, Acuna, and Betts. It's not that, and plenty of cheap guys. It's not that difficult to roster real pitchers and still get bats that you want.
Right.
So you're not getting a huge edge there in terms of getting to like roster constructions that people can't get to if you go cheaper a pitcher. The other problem is that without any like opener and then bulk reliever type thing, you're guessing at what pitchers are going to be used, and then you still have to get them to pitch well. Like, you're probably getting an inning or an inning plus of these guys, so you need like 3 strikeouts in an inning so that you get your 8 points or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to see. The big thing's the hitter pricing, because it's really hard to see, like, when you think about it, how does your cheap pitcher really help you? And unless one of these pitchers just gets absolutely bombed and like goes negative and gets outscored by your 5-point relief pitcher, it's really hard to see how that gives you like the best lineup. Yeah. And even in that situation where, let's say Yarbrough just gets lit up, then you probably need a Houston stack, and you can stack Houston with, you can get some version of a Houston stack at least with Kershaw and Anderson, I'm sure. So
absolutely,
it's just really hard to see how it plays out in your favor.
Yeah, you have to get the reliever that gets the win. Full stop.
Right.
That has to happen for it to be super relevant. Or you end up getting some guy that comes in and throws like 3 innings, which is almost impossible to predict. So you got to hope you get the win correctly. Do you think that DraftKings and FanDuel and Yahoo and everybody should just add holds and saves at this point? Would it be more interesting if you got, 2 for a hold, 3 for a save or something, just to add an additional wrinkle?
Not I mean, it would add more to it, but it's kind to me, it would kinda be like adding a kicker or a defense where you're just adding random shit that is gonna add, like, variance and stuff,
Yeah,
which whatever, it can be fun, it's something to talk about, but I don't think it improves the product, at least for what I'm looking for in the product.
that's fair. We had a lot of questions about it yesterday on Live Before Lock, so I wanted to get your take there. And look, if you're playing, obviously, if you're playing one lineup, there's no chance you're building it with a reliever. If you have 150 and you tell me you get to one or two, I don't think that that's like the most outlandish thing in the world. But just make sure you have
Yeah.
a plan for what you're doing.
Can you hear what's going on outside my window?
No,
Okay. They're, like, paving the street outside my house, so it's loud for me, but I didn't know if it was, like, coming through the stream, and I was gonna mute if it was, but okay.
I don't hear anything right now. Um, I also do have noise suppression set up on you, so it might just remove it
Okay.
for everybody else anyway. Put it this way: if it was really a problem, chat would certainly let you
Yeah,
know.
that's fair.
Not that there's a ton of chat right now, but you know what I mean. Let's talk a little bit about the bats then. We'll start on the Rays side. Uh, Meadows, Lau, Choi. It would be the first three bats that stand out to me. We had yesterday's slate on the top stacks tool. Basically, everybody was between 22 and 27% odds of being the top stack. They were 22 to 27% aggregate ownership. There wasn't a lot of like leverage to be gained. So I think it's probably easy, even though we don't have ownership yet, to just simply talk about the plays that we like. Where does Tampa rank for you on this slate in terms of a stack?
I mean, it'll entirely depend on ownership because, well, man, it's a weird slate because like I obviously you really want the Braves offense and the Dodgers offense, but they're both facing really good pitchers.
Yeah.
And then here, in this game, you're not. So, one thing I'm interested to see is what Tampa's lineup actually looks like here. Urquidy, among at, in addition to his weird strikeout numbers this year, is giving up way, way, way more power to right-handed hitters. Um, Last year, he gave up power pretty equally. 206 expected ISO to lefties, 197 to righties. Actual ISO numbers were skewed towards righties. But this year, 144 expected ISO to lefties, like zero power to in terms of actual ISO. Right-handed hitters, 234 expected ISO, 208 ISO. We saw the A's go with a right-handed heavy lineup against Urquidy. I'm wondering if Tampa throws like Hunter Renfroe in here, is where normally they'll play him against lefties. So that would be something that's worth paying attention to and interesting. And you should get low ownership if he's in there because the lineup will come out relatively late. So, but that being said, I think that looking to the right-handed bats can give you a little bit of an advantage if they're going to be a little bit lower owned. Randy Arozarena playing so well that I doubt his ownership's that low, but does hit from the right side. Manny Margot is really cheap and has some power from the right side. So in addition to, I'm not saying not to roster Meadows and Lau and Choi, like they're all good, but looking to those right-handed bats, going back to a cheap Willie Adames at shortstop, I think are some pretty good ideas. And honestly, I hope Renfroe's in the lineup.
Yeah, when you mentioned Margot, that was the one that stood out most to me. 3,200 in the 5 spot. You get that righty-righty matchup, just potentially beneficial to Margot. Grades out pretty well compared to the Meadows, Lau, Choi, the guys that are like actually above average bats. So I like the idea of getting to Margot there. Unfortunately, the Rays do rank as my 4th stack of 4. Not that I would have 0 of anybody, but they are last for me. So barring any crazy low ownership coming out of Tampa, I would expect them to be my lowest owned team. Meadows is the guy that grades out best. I don't get the sense that that should be a terribly shocking opinion. Anybody you don't like from Tampa? I know that we have on a 2-game slate, we're going to like everybody in some sort of way, barring really weird ownership. Is there anybody that stands out as a guy that you're not going to get a lot of?
No, I don't think so. I mean, if there were like a mediocre left-handed hitter that I expected to get ownership, I would say maybe I was low on them, but like I doubt Joey Wendell's getting much ownership.
Yeah, I was going to say
I doubt
4,100 for him at third is a really not great
right.
spot.
Yeah, I doubt Kevin Kiermaier is getting much ownership if he does start. So yeah, I don't think so. I think it's more just relatively low ownership on the right-handed bats. Zanino, another one where you at least yesterday you saw so much ownership going to d'Arnaud and Will Smith. I don't know if that'll be the case again today because the pitching there is so much better. But if it is, Zanino gives you a ton of right-handed power for cheap at maybe lower ownership.
Two more just generic slate questions, since I think it'll gain a little bit more for people in comparison to just us talking about how much we like individual bats. How many hitters are you willing to play against your pitcher?
I think yesterday I capped it at 3.
Ooh, okay, that's a much higher number than I was expecting.
I
I
know I
assumed
played.
1 or 2 was your answer, so 3
I
is
know I played 3 in cash.
okay.
Cash, I think I capped it at like 5 and just looked to see what would happen.
Yeah.
But I mean, with it being so it's something that Jake and I talked about yesterday. I think that on the smaller slates, especially with a sport like baseball, where there's just so much randomness, almost anything you do that is suboptimal in terms of correlation and stuff like that probably is outweighed just by the fact that it's helping to make you unique. You can pretty easily Ryan Yarbrough can have a decent game, a good enough game at 7,400, and he can still give up, a home run or two. And he's probably not going to go deep into the game. Like, he's going to go 4 or 5 innings. So you're still going to get in a bat or two for Houston guys against the bullpen. I'm not saying it's ideal. Like, if I'm hand building one tournament lineup, I'm not playing 3 guys against my pitcher.
Yeah.
But I'm not really opposed to having some lineups that do, just because, again, it makes the path a little bit harder for your lineup to do well. But I think it's probably offset just by the fact that it's really hard to differentiate on a 2-game slate, and that gives you a way to do it.
I think I would cap at 2, because it's the playoffs. I understand that we get the smaller chunk of this, but if Ryan Yarbrough happens to give up 2 home runs to Michael Brantley and Yuli Gurriel, and those are the 2 guys that I have against him, I also think that that's more likely to get Yarbrough yanked.
That's a good point, yeah.
So they're not going to have the same sort of leash they would have to give up 2 home runs in a regular season game. So you might be biting off a little bit more than you can chew by not getting that. Like, he'll never see the 5th inning then, likely. So I don't know how much that offset is. Fair point. But I definitely don't have any sort of issue having 2 guys there. Look, 2 solo home runs are going to be monstrous on a 2-game slate, and it doesn't necessarily mean that your pitcher died.
I did. So I think I don't even remember for sure what I did yesterday. I think what I did for my tournament lineups was set the cap at 3, but then I used the boost tool in FC to knock down the projection on opposing hitters like 10 or 15%. So that most of my lineups weren't going to have 3 guys.
That makes sense.
If, a couple did, then whatever.
I like it. And shout out to the new group and boost tool from Fantasy Cruncher. What up, Dave? I don't have my Thanks Fantasy Cruncher shirt on, but man, would it have been a good time for that. Anything else you want to touch on from the Tampa Bat side?
I don't think so. Pay attention to if Renfroe's in the lineup. He becomes a really good tournament play if he is.
Your audio just got like ultra crisp and clear in my ears there. I don't know what changed.
It was a really good call on Renfroe. It needed to be heard.
I don't know. It's like it switched microphones. I do hear a little bit more noise in the background now.
I'm on the right microphone now. I don't know if I was on the wrong one before.
You might have been on the wrong one before, because your voice in particular is now crystal clear in my ears. Not that it was like bad before, but it's just better.
Yeah.
And I can pick up a faint amount of background noise now.
Huh. I wonder if I was on like my computer mic before.
Maybe. All right, let's slide over to the Astros. Astros coming in as my number 2 stack on both FanDuel and DraftKings. A little bit a little easier to get to on DK than FanDuel. They're second in value there too. I mean, the first 5 bats are obviously fantastic. I don't have anything individually to say other than I think Kyle Tucker for 3,800 is just way too cheap. There's not really a bat that I don't want. I assume Maldonado is like owned more than I would like just because there are only 4 catchers, but all things considered, I really like the Astros side of this. How are you feeling about Houston?
If they're owned, again, like I'll prefer whichever of these teams is lower owned. I think it's pretty close. I do think Yarbrough is a solid pitcher. Like he's pretty good at limiting productivity from both sides. 152 expected ISO to righties this year. sub 100 to lefties. Going back to last year, 146 expected ISO to lefties, 141 to righties. Like he does a good job limiting power. So if a lot of ownership is going to Houston, and I expect there will be, because you are going to get these right-handed bats against Yarborough. They are a little bit more expensive than they had been, so that's nice. But if there's a lot of ownership going there, I don't mind getting away from it. But if not, Springer, Altuve, Bregman, I think all look pretty good. Correa is still relatively inexpensive.
Yeah, the first 5 guys just very bright green color in my column. Even Gurriel and Correa and Reddick are all shades of brighter yellow. So
I was gonna say Gurriel probably the cash first baseman. I haven't built. I
no.
obviously haven't built a cash lineup yet, but with these 4 teams, I think normally your options are going to be either Freeman or Gurriel, and I'm not sure that paying $5K for Freeman against Kershaw is going to be the path.
World is that showing up, and who the hell is that person in a lineup? I guess he is. Oh, okay. I need to add this character to my sheet. Apparently, the Braves are starting someone that I don't have added in my name sheet.
Who?
Christian Pache. Ash?
Oh yeah, he's one of their top prospects, but Adam Duvall got hurt yesterday.
That I saw. Let me get that added because I pulled it up and I was trying to look at just first baseman and it showed me this dude's name like 27 straight times, and I was like, oh, that seems like it's not the way to do this.
Yeah, number 1 prospect by Fangraphs, 11th overall.
Good glove, apparently. 70 field, 80 max, 70 arm. Yeah. Can't hit worth shit though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's see.
I know Braves Twitter thinks he is better than Mike Trout, or going to be better than Mike Trout. I've seen that be a thing.
I mean, it's basically, you should never say that about anyone.
Obviously.
Yeah. It's just so silly. Okay, so first baseman, you were saying Gurriel as the cash first baseman. I think I would have Choi over Gurriel. $500 more expensive. I have him a 1.1 points ahead of him too.
Yeah, I think that makes
and
sense.
then given salaries, hell, wouldn't even be shocked if it ended up being Freeman. You can afford everything you want. Any bats that you do not like? Or actually, this will be a popular question for most people. So we get a lot of catcher questions. Do you prefer Maldonado or Zunino in this game?
Zunino.
Okay.
I actually like Zunino.
I also prefer Zunino. $200 cheaper, better projection, more likely to buy a home run. Pretty much.
Yeah, tons of power against a pitcher who hasn't been getting strikeouts and who gives up power. It's kind of the dream for Zunino.
Anthony Ruiz had the question, can we get FC Pro through Awesemo? I already have FC through Awesemo. Yep, there should be a button in the top right corner when you go to FC that says upgrade to Pro, and then you can do it. You are billed independently of Awesemo, so that will show up as a Fantasy Cruncher charge, like on your card. But you can still get FC Pro if you have Fantasy Cruncher through us. Anything else you want to touch on Rays and Astros?
So I pulled up Yarborough's stolen base numbers, because when you talk about someone like Kyle Tucker, that can add some value there.
Yeah.
He's not bad. He grades out pretty average. So it's not like he's a lefty that you can't run on. He doesn't, give up a million stolen bases either, but at the very least, Tucker will have a chance to steal some bags.
Guys, free content today. We got a lot of it. You're listening to an MLB show. Good news for you. MLB ownership free today, whenever it comes out. If you're interested in our golf data, PGA projections free today. And then we have just a monstrous list of shows going on. 10 a.m. So immediately after this show, NFL Showdown Strategy, because it's Tuesday and we've got NFL football tonight. Laffy and Matt going to break down their showdown strategies for tonight. Then Laffy is right back at it again at 11 a.m. Both he and Ben and Sal going to be breaking down the full NFL slate for next week. 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, PGA strategy for the CJ Cup, I believe. That will be Ben Raza and Tim Frank. 5:15 Eastern Time, MLB Live Before Lock with Jake and Terry. And then 6 p.m. Eastern Time, NFL Live Before Lock with the boss man, Alex Baker. and Kyle. So 5 more shows coming up after this. Should be a content-filled day. And once again, shout out to Yahoo for being the presenting sponsor of this show. I highly recommend playing there. It's a great place to build your bankroll. You'll see low management fees or no management fee contests. It's usually going to be the best contest in the industry unless FanDuel decides to stop updating their stats, at which point they end up having overlay in everything that they do. That shouldn't be likely. So at that point, you should slide yourself right over to Yahoo to get into their contest. Honestly, their no management fee contest is going to be the best thing that you can find in the industry each and every day. Anytime that you don't have to pay any sort of fees on the back end, you are going to save yourself a couple shekels. Let's see what they have. They don't have anything up for baseball right now, so that's not going to be very helpful. But when they do, you should go play there. So make better choices. Use Yahoo Daily Fantasy. Then let's close this one out. Dodgers and Braves. Coin flip game, 51% chance for Atlanta to win. 4.3 run implied total for the Braves, 4.2 for the Dodgers. It's Clayton Kershaw, Ian Anderson. Who do you prefer?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Kershaw.
Yeah, you and me both. Clayton Kershaw is, I don't think it's particularly close today, the clear top option. I can't imagine what his ownership is going to be, but it is going to be 60 plus pretty easily. The better question then is, what do you do with Anderson? $500 cheaper than Kershaw, $9,400 on FanDuel, so he's $600 cheaper there. I think he's going to go a little underrepresented.
I mean, he's my preferred SP2.
Okay.
I think he's really good.
Yeah.
Like, really good.
So you like running out the Kershaw-Anderson combo?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I don't think it's not like I don't really like Yarbrough or Urquidy, and I think Anderson's better than them. Like, I think Ian Anderson is very, very, very good.
So how does that affect the way that you roster bats? I have Atlanta as my number one stack today. I had them there yesterday as well. Dodgers are third for me today. How do you try to handle building your lineups when you have a large amount of the pitching from the game?
I mean, I'm going to be getting a lot of Houston and a lot of Tampa Bay.
Okay.
But, you know, it's tough too, because it's not even like either of these pitchers really struggle with power. Kershaw still is doing the weird thing where he gets absolutely murdered by lefties. So, you know, I guess, again, you know, Freeman, especially if his ownership does come down a bit because of the lefty-lefty matchup. But, you know, outside of that, there's nothing really there from Atlanta. And then Anderson, so far at least, has allowed like no power. 0.28 home runs per 9, 0.076 expected ISO to righties, 0.025 expected ISO to lefties. You know, not saying that the Dodgers can't touch him up, because obviously they have some of the best hitters in the league, but he's been great. His changeup is ridiculously good, and then he also throws like 96 miles an hour. So not in love with hitters from either side. Obviously, both of these lineups are so talented that if ownership is low, I perfectly fine going to them in tournaments just because they're really good. There's 4 teams on the slate, and you know, if Clayton Kershaw pitches poorly in the playoffs, it certainly won't be the first time. And if the rookie pitching for Atlanta has a bad game in the playoffs, that also would not be surprising. So, like, it's not like it can't happen. But if I assume that like all teams are equal or more or less in terms of ownership, I'd be preferring the Houston Tampa side.
Okay. From the bats for the Dodgers, I've got Betts and Bellinger standing out as my top 2 potential hitters to roster. 5,300 on DK for Betts, 4,500 for Bellinger. I like the middle of the order, the 2, 3, 4, 5 spot, a little bit better actually on FanDuel than I do on DraftKings. What stands out to you most from the Dodgers from an individual bat perspective? I really don't like the bottom of their order.
So I think that Ian Anderson is weird. So normally when you see pitchers like Ian Anderson that have his pitch mix where his changeup is his best pitch and he does throw it to both sides of the plate, he throws it a little bit more to lefties, but he throws it to righties too. A lot of times those guys end up having issues with same-handed power. As I said before, that hasn't been the case whatsoever with Anderson. His strikeout percentage is much lower against righties, 22.5% to righties, 36.5% to lefties, but it hasn't translated to power. I don't mind the idea, though, of thinking that it just hasn't yet and that it will. and taking shots on guys like Betts, Turner, Will Smith. Also, if you go back and look, and I don't do it a whole lot, I think that it kind of got overhyped in the industry, and so I stopped doing it. But looking at pitch types, because Anderson does rely so heavily on that changeup, going back to 2018, Justin Turner, 435 expected WOBA, 262 expected ISO, only an 8.7% swinging strike percentage against right-handed changeups. So looks like he would not have much of a problem in this particular matchup. So I think he looks pretty good.
I like that call. Well, I mean, I'm cheering against the Dodgers, but I like what you're saying. That changeup against righties just tailing into the barrel of the bat is pretty tasty for some like pull power. Taylor Pollock Barnes just not grading out all that well for me. 4,200 for Will Smith. Who do you think gets more ownership, Darno or Will Smith here? Darno $200 more expensive.
Probably Smith.
I would say so too. On the Atlanta side, this is my number one team. Acuna, Freeman, Ozuna, probably my favorite 3-person combination of anyone on the slate. Christian Pache, 2,100 on DraftKings. If he is in the starting lineup, that's going to be a pretty good cash option, I guess, and certainly one of the better values for the day. Flat minimum on FanDuel. Talk to me a little bit about this Atlanta stack.
A ton. Again, will depend on ownership here, because we touched on it when we talked about the pitching. Like, Kershaw's the number one pitcher, and so if you assume that ownership is more or less equal, then I'm going to be least interested in Atlanta. But I don't expect that'll be the case, because you're going to get a lot of ownership going to Kershaw. That's going to drive down Atlanta's ownership, and so it will. They'll most likely end up being a good leverage stack here, because again, they just have so much power in this lineup. It's such a good lineup. Kershaw, the most likely outcome is that Kershaw has a good game, but there's so much power here that on a 2-game slate, I'm very interested in the Braves if they're going to be low owned. I mentioned it before, but Kershaw, 303 expected ISO, 240 actual ISO to lefties this year. Last year, he allowed a 174 ISO to lefties. To righties this year, 149 actual ISO, 149 actual ISO, 130 expected ISO. Also striking out about 5 percentage points higher righties versus lefties. So, I think Freeman, if the ownership does come down because of the matchup, is a really interesting play. But then, Acuna, Ozuna, D'Arnaud, like, there's so much power. The only hitter in this lineup that doesn't have power is Nick Markakis.
Yeah. Well, and potentially Pache.
Christian Pache.
I looked it up. It's Pache. I had to, because I didn't want to just keep saying it.
Yeah.
I had no idea. The moment I said it the first time, I was like, Pache.
I'd heard it pronounced too, and I was pretty sure whatever you just said just now was right.
Pache.
But yeah, Pache.
Thanks, Baseball Reference. Helps us out a ton. Braves had the lowest amount of aggregate ownership yesterday. Now, you shouldn't just look 1-to-1, but there's going to be a lot of consistency day over day for it, and it's not as if the Dodgers are rolling out a worse pitcher. I mean, however you want to detail that is fine, but it's not like people are lining up to stack against Clayton Kershaw. So I assume the Braves come in at the ass end of the ownership again today, and that makes me kind of interested. It's weird to know that I like the Braves the most and Clayton Kershaw the most. Those are the slates that are difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes back to ownership, especially on a 2-game baseball slate, dictating so much. It's not about, we talked about it on the NFL show with you and Lofty and I yesterday. Nobody's good at predicting what's going to happen in any sporting event in a 1-game sample, especially baseball. So, we can sit here and say that we think XYZ is going to happen because that's the quote unquote most likely thing to happen. But ownership can real quickly change what the best approach to a tournament is, because it's about probabilities. Like, nothing is even close to 100% to happen. It's just about, looking at the probability of one thing happening versus where the ownership is going to be. That's really all that it is. So, I think there's a good chance that when ownership projections come out, the Braves look pretty good.
Yeah, like if Clayton Kershaw shows up in the ownership at 85%, just random number here, having less than that is going to be the optimal play.
Right.
And having more Atlanta is going to be the natural symptom to that.
Like, with 4 teams going in the playoffs against, in the Atlanta game, you have 2 good pitchers. In the Tampa Bay Houston game, you have two teams that are going to probably use their bullpen well. At least we know Tampa is. Houston, kind of a question mark. But so you're not expecting. There's no matchup that is just like, oh, this is really good. So like on average, like if you don't know anything about the matchups, you're going to assume each team has a 25% chance of being the highest scoring team. When you factor in matchups, maybe Atlanta drops to like 15% or something like that. Like they're not going to be like 3% or some crazy low number. And so, you know, using your example, if Kershaw's 85% owned, and Atlanta has, let's say, a 15% chance of being the top scoring stack, they're naturally going to be lower owned than they should.
Yep, 100% there. It's the most important piece of this. On a 2-game slate, knowing where everyone else is almost more important than knowing what you want to do, because it should all be dictated based on the public. If you knew Clayton Kershaw was 0% owned, you'd probably have him in every single lineup you played. If you knew he was 100, you'd have a very minimal amount of Clayton Kershaw.
Right. Yeah, it's just all about maximizing how much you win and not how often you win.
Very true. Favorite bat in this game? Oh, this one.
Turner? I think it's Turner.
Okay. It's Acuna for me. For getting into a little bit more detail. I like the Turner call with the pitch type data. Not to overreact to it, but I do like that as like a tiebreaker. All right, let's sum it up.
I'll add to that a little bit. I say Turner because I assume his ownership is going to be lower compared to guys like Acuna.
Sure.
And that's like obvious. Again, if you give me equal ownership on Justin Turner and Mookie Betts in the same matchup, I'll take Mookie Betts every time. I assume that's not going to be the case.
All right, we're going to sum it all up here. Put you on the spot. Ignoring ownership, rank the starting pitchers and the teams from an offense perspective.
Ignoring ownership?
Yeah.
Okay. Kershaw, Anderson, Yarbrough, Urquidy. Tampa, Dodgers, Houston, Braves.
You read that off in the exact opposite order of my hitting.
I was pretty sure I was.
Yeah. So mine.
I didn't know about the Dodgers part. I knew you had Tampa last.
Mine would be Kershaw, Urquidy, Anderson, Yarbrough, Braves, Astros, Dodgers, Rays. So take whatever you want out of that, guys.
So you're just going in the inverse of Vegas implied odds.
I don't know. Am I?
No, I mean, I don't think you did exactly. I know the Braves are by far the lowest.
Braves? Wait. Did I type the line in wrong for this game?
You might have. Dodgers are big favorites.
I have it as a coin. That's the issue. I have these two lines flip-flopped.
Yeah.
I have the Astros line as the Tampa Bay line. So that should be 110.
All right, start the show over.
Yeah. 101. I mean, it's not going to change much, but it will make a difference for the pitchers. 153, 167. I would have been better off just shutting up and not mentioning that this happened. I just like Atlanta and the Dodgers playing the late game last night and the early game today is so stupid. 8.6 and 7.9. All right, so in summary, pitching doesn't change. Bats ends up being Astros, Braves, Dodgers, Rays. 4.5 run implied total for the Dodgers, 3.4 for the Braves. So yeah, Braves are by far last, but even still show up second for me. That's all I got, guys. Thank you to the 90 people that are here and 49 likes. So that's basically half. I mean, that's north of half. So kudos to you guys for hitting that thumbs up. If you heard me earlier, we've got a ton of content coming up today. Videos over and over and over again. 2 back-to-back NFL shows about to happen now with Laffy. So make sure you give him the thumbs up because I know he feels sad when no one cares about his shows. Adam, anything else here?
No, I think that's it.
You got anything else going on today?
Nope. I'm done.
There you go. Guys, thank you for joining us. Good luck today. Thank you to Yahoo for being the presenting sponsor. And have some fun on this lovely Tuesday. Adios.